Lonomia caterpillar. The Lonomia caterpillar is a master of camouflage found primarily within the dense, humid neotropical forests of South America. Unlike most stinging caterpillars that use their bristles to cause localized pain, itching, or minor hives, the Lonomia obliqua is entirely different. Its body is covered in intricate, branch-like spines that blend perfectly against the bark of native trees, making it nearly invisible to the untrained eye. These spines are hollow tubes loaded with one of the most potent toxins found in the insect world. In rural Brazil, a 70-year-old woman was simply resting near a tree trunk when she accidentally brushed her arm against a hidden cluster of these caterpillars. At first, the encounter seemed harmless. The initial physical contact produced a mild burning sensation, similar to brushing against stinging nettles. However, over the next few hours, a complex cocktail of venom began to quietly circulate through her bloodstream. The venom of the Lonomia caterpillar contains highly active procoagulant proteins, specifically enzymes that force the human body's blood to clot at an unnatural, catastrophic rate. This triggers a condition known as consumptive coagulopathy. The venom essentially tricks the body into using up all of its natural clotting factors at once. Once these factors are depleted, the blood completely loses its ability to coagulate, leading to spontaneous and uncontrolled internal bleeding. For the Brazilian woman, the mild burn quickly escalated into a systemic nightmare. Bruises began erupting spontaneously under her skin. She started hemorrhaging from her mucous membranes, and internal bleeding developed throughout her vital organs. Despite being rushed to medical care, doctors were entirely unable to stop the bleeding without an immediate, specific antivenom. The internal hemorrhaging eventually reached her brain, causing a massive, fatal cerebral hemorrhage, and she died shortly afterward. The terror of this creature lies in the absolute disproportion between the encounter and the outcome. A gentle, accidental touch of a camouflaged insect, with no active bite or aggressive sting involved, was enough to completely dismantle the human body's circulatory system and cause a catastrophic, inescapable death. Brown Recluse spider. The brown recluse spider is one of the most misunderstood and quietly dangerous arachnids on the planet. Native to the southern and central regions of the United States, this spider is not aggressive by nature. It prefers to remain completely hidden in dry, dark, undisturbed environments. It thrives in attics, within the deep recesses of wall voids and inside abandoned structures. The danger usually arises only when humans unknowingly invade these spaces and press the spider against their skin, prompting a defensive bite. In 2013, Ronald Reese, a 62-year-old man from Lakeland, Florida, was working to renovate an old, decaying house. As he was tearing out existing walls and ceilings, he was bitten on the back of the neck by what medical experts determined to be a brown recluse. Initially, the bite appeared entirely harmless, leaving only a small stinging puncture mark. But the venom of the brown recluse contains a highly destructive enzyme called sphingomyelinase D. Instead of attacking the nervous system to cause immediate death, this enzyme actively targets and destroys cell membranes, triggering a severe necrotic reaction. It literally melts human tissue. By the next day, Reese could barely force himself out of bed due to overwhelming systemic fatigue. Over the following weeks, the small bite expanded into a painful blister, and the surrounding flesh began to turn black and die. The localized tissue necrosis expanded deep into his neck, eventually forming a massive, infected abscess that pressed directly against his spinal cord. For 6 excruciating months, Reese endured repeated hospital visits, intensive medical procedures, and creeping paralysis. His health steadily deteriorated as the necrotic infection compromised his immune system, eventually leading to severe pneumonia. Despite every medical intervention, his body simply could not recover from the cascading complications, and he died in early 2014. The sheer horror of the brown recluse lies in its invisible threat and the agonizingly slow timeline of its venom. A tiny, unnoticed bite in a dark room did not kill instantly, but rather initiated a half-year descent into rotting tissue, slow paralysis, and unrelenting physical agony. Tsetse fly. The tsetse fly is an ancient and deadly resident of sub-Saharan Africa. While it may look remarkably similar to an ordinary housefly, it is a strictly blood-feeding insect with a prominent needle-like proboscis extending from its head. But the true danger of the tsetse fly is not the insect itself, it is what the fly carries inside its gut. The tsetse fly is the primary vector for a microscopic protozoan parasite called Trypanosoma brucei, which is responsible for one of the most horrifying illnesses on Earth. Human African trypanosomiasis, commonly known as African sleeping sickness. Throughout history, this tiny fly has claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, devastating entire rural communities that rely on agriculture and fishing. When an infected tsetse fly bites a human, it injects the trypanosome parasites directly into the bloodstream and lymphatic system. These parasites are biological masters of evasion. They survive by constantly shedding and replacing their surface proteins, effectively outrunning the human immune system in a relentless microscopic chase. The first stage of the illness masquerades as a common tropical infection, bringing waves of fever, severe headaches, extreme fatigue, and aching joints. Patients often dismiss it until it is too late. The true nightmare begins when the disease enters its second stage. The parasites manage to cross the highly restricted blood-brain barrier, invading the central nervous system and bathing the brain in an inflammatory storm. Victims begin to experience terrifying neurological decline. Their personalities shift entirely. They become confused, aggressive, and suffer from intense, waking hallucinations. The parasite specifically damages the regions of the brain that regulate the circadian rhythm, leading to the disease's namesake symptom. The sleep-wake cycle completely inverts. Victims suffer from severe, manic insomnia at night and fall into unrousable, coma-like slumbers during the day. Without highly specialized and toxic medical treatment, the brain slowly shuts down, leading to a permanent coma and inevitable death. The terror of the tsetse fly is its ability to steal a person's humanity. A simple fly bite results in a slow, agonizing erasure of the mind, where the victim loses control of their sanity and body over months of neurological decay. Tick. The tick is a highly adapted, blood-sucking ectoparasite that survives by latching onto passing mammals, birds, and humans. Among the most dangerous of these are ticks belonging to the Hyaloma genus. These resilient arachnids hide in tall grasses and brush, waiting for carbon dioxide and body heat to signal an approaching host. In the summer of 2024, an 83-year-old man in the rural Bragança district of Portugal was going about his normal agricultural activities when he unknowingly became the host for one of these ticks. At first, he felt absolutely nothing. Ticks are evolutionary survivalists. Their saliva contains natural anesthetics and anti-inflammatory compounds that numb the skin, making their bite entirely painless and practically invisible. However, this specific tick was carrying a deadly norovirus responsible for Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. For days, the virus silently incubated in the man's body. When the symptoms finally erupted, local doctors initially suspected a standard regional illness, like Mediterranean spotted fever, but the man's condition rapidly and violently deteriorated. The virus systematically attacked his vascular endothelium, the critical inner lining of his blood vessels, causing massive cellular damage and severe immune dysregulation. His blood lost its ability to stay within the circulatory system. Laboratory tests soon confirmed the terrifying reality. He had contracted a viral hemorrhagic fever. He began to bleed spontaneously from his skin, his gums, and deep within his internal organs. The sheer trauma of the internal hemorrhaging caused rapid multi-organ failure. Despite being rushed to a major hospital, the damage was irreversible, and he became the first locally acquired fatal case of the disease in Portugal. This incident sent a wave of alarm through European health authorities, proving that migratory birds and shifting global climates had permanently introduced a deadly, tropical hemorrhagic virus into a completely new region of the world. The terror of this tick-borne disease is rooted in its absolute stealth. A victim will almost never feel the bite, yet days later, they are struck by an explosive, flesh-bleeding fever brought on by a nearly invisible parasite waiting quietly in the grass. Asian Giant Hornet. The Asian Giant Hornet is the largest and arguably the most heavily armored hornet species on the planet. Native to the temperate and tropical forests of eastern Asia, adults can grow up to 2 inches long with a wingspan of 3 inches. Their jaws are strong enough to decapitate other insects, but their true weapon is a massive stinger, measuring nearly 1/4 of an inch long enough to easily pierce through the thick protective suits worn by standard beekeepers. In 2025, Daniel Owen and his teenage son Cooper were on a vacation, enjoying a high-altitude zipline adventure through the dense forest canopies of Laos. Midway through their excursion, suspended hundreds of feet in the air, they accidentally disturbed a massive, hidden Asian giant hornet nest built into the trees. When threatened, these hornets do not just sting, they release a highly potent chemical alarm pheromone, specifically a compound called nonan-2-1. This invisible chemical cloud physically marks the target and signals the entire colony to attack with brutal, coordinated efficiency. Within seconds, a massive swarm erupted from the nest and descended upon the father and son. Because they were securely strapped into their harnesses and hanging from a metal cable high above the jungle floor, escape was a physical impossibility. They were completely trapped in the air, entirely defenseless against the onslaught. Both received massive, overlapping numbers of stings across their exposed bodies. The venom of the Asian giant hornet is a devastating biological weapon, packed with cytolytic peptides that actively break down human tissue, and powerful neurotoxins that trigger excruciating pain. While they survived the immediate horror of the swarm and were eventually lowered to the ground to reach medical care, the sheer volume of the venom circulating in their bloodstreams was fatal. The venom triggered a massive breakdown of their muscle tissue, a condition known as rhabdomyolysis. The dead muscle cells flooded their blood, instantly clogging and destroying their kidneys. Despite emergency intervention, both father and son succumbed to massive organ failure and died later that same day. The psychological horror of the Asian giant hornet is the inescapable nature of its swarm, capable of trapping victims in an agonizing, coordinated attack that destroys the body from the inside out. Rat flea. The rat flea is an incredibly small, seemingly insignificant ectoparasite that feeds primarily on the blood of rodents. Yet, this microscopic creature is directly responsible for engineering the most catastrophic loss of human life in recorded history. Between the years 1346 and 1353, the oriental rat flea, known scientifically as Xenopsilla chaopus, served as the primary vector for a pandemic that wiped out up to 50% of Europe's population, the Black Death. The flea carried a highly aggressive strain of bacteria called Yersinia pestis. The biological mechanism of this transmission is as brilliant as it is horrifying. When the flea ingested the blood of an infected rat, the plague bacteria would rapidly multiply inside the flea's digestive tract. The bacteria produced a thick, sticky biofilm that eventually expanded to completely block the flea's stomach. Unable to swallow any new blood, the flea would begin to starve. Driven into a frantic, ravenous frenzy, the starving flea would abandon the dying rat population and jump to the nearest human hosts. It would bite deeply, but because its gut was blocked, it would regurgitate the highly infectious, bacteria-laden blood directly back into the human's open bite wound. Once inside the human body, the plague bacteria migrated straight to the lymphatic system. Victims first experienced sudden, freezing chills, extreme weakness, and soaring fevers. Within a matter of days, the lymph nodes in their groin, armpits, and neck would swell into massive, agonizing masses known as buboes. As the disease progressed, the bacteria flooded the bloodstream, causing septicemic plague. The toxins triggered severe subcutaneous hemorrhaging, causing the victim's fingers, toes, and skin to necrotize and turn pitch black. Death usually followed within less than a week of the first symptom. The fleas spread the disease so efficiently across trade routes that entire towns were completely depopulated. Families were forced to watch their loved ones die in rapid succession, with no understanding of what was killing them. The ultimate terror of the rat flea is the sheer scale of its devastation. A microscopic blockage inside the gut of an insect smaller than a grain of rice altered the entire course of human civilization, erasing over 50 million lives and leaving a permanent scar on the history of the world. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more, and let me know in the comments if you'd like to see part 2.